Good morning. My name is Taylor. I'm on staff here at StoneBridge. One Sunday a year, we trying to set aside some time to invite y'all to look at our finances with us, to invite you to be a part of what it is that we do, and also to add some transparency and accountability into our finances from the congregation. So it's a lot of information for first thing on a Sunday morning, but we are going to just go ahead and jump in and get started. So on this first slide here, you'll see 3 years. We're going to spend most of our time on the right-hand side looking at 2025. And so last year was actually our most generous giving year that StoneBridge has seen so far. We brought in $4.1 million, and that is due to the generosity of the people in this room. 2.9 plus there's a small gray sliver at the bottom there that's miscellaneous income, things like event registrations or renting the building for a baby shower. That makes up $3.1 million, and that's our general fund that we operate out of. Our operating expenses come out of that 3.1, and then beyond that, y'all gave $1 million in specific gifts last year. Those specific gifts are things like Christmas Eve or when you select Act 6 on the drop down in the Church Center app when you give. And those designated gifts go directly and are spent on what they are designated for. So we don't actually make decisions with those. Y'all as a congregation give specifically for that. We want to make sure that that impacts the ministries that you have identified. So last year it was a total of $4.1 million that came in that we saw there. We're going to see what that looks like on the back side, on the expenses on the next slide. Last year we spent $4.4 million. That $877 is going to be those same specific gifts we just talked about once those are spent. And then the remaining balance under that is going to be our operating expenses with a little bit of savings that we spent last year on things like building repairs. So those operating expenses are broken up between ministry, which is going to be those food truck nights, communion bread, all the way down to our operating side of things like salaries and utility bills. One of the things that we choose to spend money on is we recognize that this congregation supports us out of their income, and so we actually turn around and support other ministries from our income. And so 12% of every dollar that StoneBridge receives in those general contributions, we turn around and we support other ministries like Act 6. We support our long-term mission partners and our partners in education. And that's a big piece of what we spend those finances on. So you can't tell from all the different colors up there, but the takeaway that I want y'all to hear is that of that $4.4 million we spent last year, $1.2 million actually went out and didn't stay within these four walls. It supported the ministry partners that we have locally and across the world, supported churches that we give to financially here and on the other side of the world. Act 6, One Camp, Little Learners, $1.2 million did not stay here, but rather it impacted community transformation here and abroad. And so we can only do that because of the generosity of the people in this room. So thank y'all so much for that. So we're going to just keep moving and look at just our operating expenses for a minute. And so when we go to the next slide, we can see the general income last year was 3.1, and our operating expenses were 3.3. So last year was our most generous giving year that we saw. It was also one of the more expensive years to operate that we had, and so there was a deficit last year. That deficit was completely covered by our long-term savings. In past years, when there have been surpluses, the admin team made a wise decision to say, let's set aside this surplus for savings. Maybe God is giving us money today that we will need for the future. And so that deficit was completely covered by savings that we have. And so we'll talk a minute just about what's in that cash and savings. So on the next slide, you can see there's $2.2 million in cash and savings. That $700,000 on the bottom is going to be those specific and designated gifts. So when y'all select to give to Act 6, it sits on our bank account until Act 6 is able to give it away. Same thing with One Camp. You give at the end of the year, and it sits in our books up until summer camp when it goes out again. And so that's what that $700,000 is there. The 1.5 above that is going to be our savings. In that is about $500,000 of a 90-day reserve. That includes utilities and mortgage payments and salaries for our staff for 3 months. And so that is earmarked aside. We also have a fund specifically for building repairs so that when something crazy comes up, it doesn't disrupt our operating expenses or our budget there. And so the admin team helps us decide what we are saving towards and for, and so that's what makes up that $1.5 million, and in total, the 2.2. So that same cash and savings, that's kind of how it's allocated. We're going to look for a second on the next slide and see where that 2.2 actually live. So that top green portion, that's about a third of our total cash and savings, and that lives in cash. So that's what's just in our bank account right now. And the other, the other 1.5, it's about 70% of our total cash and savings is invested in CDs. And that decision was made a couple years ago when we had a large surplus at the time to say, how do we want to steward this cash well? What is it going to do sitting in our bank account versus if we chose to invest it with very little risk in these CDs? So all of the interest earned on those CDs has actually gone to help us pay down our principal payment on our mortgage. We can go ahead and go to the next slide and look at what that payment has looked like on our mortgage. When we bought this building in 2019, we had a very attractive interest rate, and part of the terms of that loan was that we had to refinance in 7 years. That 7-year mark is this coming fall, and one of the things that we wanted to be sure was that even though we had an attractive interest rate before, that our mortgage payment, our monthly mortgage payment, we wanted to keep the same even when we had to refinance. So we set a goal of $1.8 million, that if we could pay our loan down to 1.8, then we would be able to keep the same monthly payment when it comes time to refinance. And so largely due to those CDs that were earning interest for us, we've been able to make overpayments on our loan. And last fall, we did make that $1.8 million goal. And so that, again, is only possible because of the generosity in this room. And so when we're looking back across the whole year, what I want y'all to hear is that last year was an incredibly generous year, and we are so appreciative of that. Even though that there was a deficit, we were still able to make our loan repayment goals, and through those things, we were still able to contribute $1.2 million, not keep it just within this church community, but to see it impact ministries and churches and benevolence, both locally to see community transformation and communities across the world. So I know that not everyone loves finances and numbers as much as I do, but if you do have any questions about the information we went over today or want a copy of the slides, I think Kim is going to send them out in the newsletter this week. But my email is up there. It's Taylor@StoneBridge Marietta. And please follow up with any kind of questions you have. I'd be happy to walk you through anything in more or in less detail. Thank y'all.
Hey, I'm David, and I'm one of the pastors here. If you're joining us online, we're glad you're doing that as well. Just my little 2 cents on the money thing. I would say if you got caught on the deficit and you're like, hey, that's a big deal. What's going on there? We launched a church last year, and the deficit and what we gave to Common Church are almost exactly the same amount. So it's not one-to-one, but that's the way that I see that, is we as a church made a conscious decision to say, hey, we want to launch these guys and we want to launch them well, and we knew it would cost us. And I would say it did in the best way. It was a kingdom decision, and we're super grateful for it, and we'll do it again. And so just like you use money out of your savings to do something that's important in your own personal life, we did the same thing. And so really grateful for that. And I do want to be clear, if that's giving you heartburn, reach out to Taylor and she'll walk you through it. She'll be your antacid. So that'll be her role. We do have an admin team. Are any of them in this room? They do come to church. They're just not here this morning. They're there on the screen behind us. They're the ones that manage all of our finances, and so they'd be happy to talk with you. If you know any of those guys, they'd be more than happy to talk with you about why we do what we do. One of the potential knock on an independent church, which is what we are, is kind of who's minding the cash register, and that's those guys' responsibility. And the reason we take time on a Sunday to do this is for the sake of transparency and accountability. We don't want you to ever be nervous or wonder what we're doing with the money that you give. So saying all that, I would say we can't do what we did last year every year, or we won't make it. And so moving forward, this is all I'll say, 2 kind of light touch things. If StoneBridge is your home church and you have an income, our expectation is that you're giving. We think that's biblical and part of being in the body. And so ultimately how much is between you and the Lord, but that's what we would expect. And I would say if you're a designator, if that's something that you do, that's okay. We don't want to get in between what you and the Lord are doing. I've been doing this for a long time, and no one has ever designated money for the power bill. And so those are things that have to happen also. And so if you're a designator, I would just ask you to reach out to Taylor this year. So we would like to see that reserve tick up over the course of this year, so we're in a better spot maybe to launch another church here before too long. And to be able to do that, we want to see that reserve number bump up a little bit. So I don't want to say don't. If the Lord has put specific things on your heart, we want to help you honor that. That's part of doing your deal. But I would love you to reach out to Taylor to ask. Some of those things that you may be thinking about supporting might be fully funded already. We won't try to dissuade you, but we will just give you the information that would be helpful. So if don't feel bad if that's you, we would just say just maybe talk to us before you make that decision in 2026. Good? All right, you guys stand. We're going to pray. God, we're so grateful for the generosity of this congregation. That's a reflection of your generosity towards us. Everything we have because you gave it to us, and it's all yours. And as a spender, that's part of my job is to spend. And for all of us, and that's part of what we do, we don't want to waste a penny, and we don't want to hoard a dime. We want all of it to be used for the kingdom, and I'm grateful to be a part of a community that sees that has a kingdom perspective, that is willing, and not just willing, but is happy and excited to see money going out the door. And we're grateful for $1.2 million in all of the lives that are represented. God, we're grateful that today there's a church meeting in Turkey because of the generosity of this congregation. There's a pastor who is and a worship leader in Turkey who are able to do what they do because the people in this congregation pay their salary. And we'll never meet them. Some of the people in this room, never going to meet those guys. But they're having a kingdom impact. We're grateful for people who are in some of the most difficult countries in the world, and they're salt and light in those places because of the generosity of the people in this room. We're grateful for people who I'm thinking of single moms who are going to come in here this week, and they're scared that they're going to get evicted because they can't pay rent. And it's not going to happen because of the generosity of people in this room. We're grateful for a preschool program that's free for moms young moms, teenage moms. We're grateful so they can stay in school. And that's possible because of the generosity of the people in this room. We're grateful for all of the ministries here in our schools, the partners. It's just great. And so we're thankful for that, and I'm thankful for the people in this room.